Good evening. Oh, Book War followers, here we go. It is Sunday night, and we're going to wait for Miss Hattie to pop on, and we will talk some books. Hopefully, you are doing some really good reading that you're enjoying right now. Oh, there she is. There we go.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
How are you?
How are you, Sid?
I'm good. How you doing?
Oh, I'm okay. My allergies just started going nuts. So,
All morning long, I was a mess. I was
yes.
sneezing. My whole head was congested. My eyes were watering. I mean, I took
Yep.
my medicine, and thankfully, by the afternoon, it started to calm down, so it wasn't so bad. But it was brutal this morning.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been outside. Our neighbors down the street are doing a porch concert tonight.
Oh, how cool.
So, I was outside, and so I think it was just a walk back. And as long as the lilacs are blooming, I'm a mess.
Yeah.
And usually once they're done, I'm fine. We're not quite done yet because spring was so late this year. Woo.
I don't know what it was that got to me today, because I haven't had a bad day all spring. I've been going along pretty good. No, nothing. And today it just was
Just
crazy.
lost it. Crazy.
Yeah.
Cool.
So,
All right. Well, we gather again. For those of you following along, today is my last day of work before my sabbatical, 12 weeks. So that's exciting. And so we are celebrating that tonight.
Yes.
Yay.
We are.
And we're just talking about some of the books that we're currently reading. I don't actually have that much, which I realized today when I was like, oh,
That's okay.
I don't really have to talk about, but that is okay. And what we're currently reading and what we're looking forward to as summer starts and as sabbatical starts for me. So, do you want to go first, sis, today?
I sure can. So I was just telling Hannah earlier this week that my May has been a little mediocre. I'm labeling it mediocre May. That was how I felt about the books that I was reading. Everything was a solid. I read a ton. I read a ton of stuff in May. I mean, I don't know, 14 books already or something. I mean, it's insane. But they're literally half of them are threes. They probably could have been twos, but I was being nice. You know what I mean?
After you give a bunch of, when you feel like you're just giving twos, you feel a little bad sometimes, and then you can
it's am I just being mean? But it's just everything's just been mediocre, not bad, but just oh, okay, well,
I read it.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
done.
Yeah. I was super excited. Hannah knows that I get super excited about things, and then I'm always let down. This is MO.
Yeah.
All the time. It doesn't matter.
The recurring theme.
It's holidays. It's literally everything. So vacations, everything.
But
this month it was definitely books.
Yeah.
So I was super excited to read. Hannah's gonna be like, "Oh my God, you're such a dork," which is true. Because I was super excited. I found this nonfiction called Justinian's Flea, and then the subtitle is Plague, Empire, and the Birth of Europe. Okay, so this is a book. This is a history book. It's a totally history book, and Emperor Justinian was the emperor in the Byzantine Empire. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I don't have to give a history lesson here, but anyway, I teach. Some of this is what I teach. This time period is what I teach. And I was really excited to read this book through this lens of how the plague really affected. It's in Constantinople. Justinian was based in Constantinople, and the plague it ran rampant during the 6th century. So during the 500s and into the 600s, right? CE, common era. And so I was really excited. Chris, I was really excited for this book, and then I read said book, which I did read the whole thing, even though I knew about a quarter of the way in that it was not what I wanted it to be. But it is a time period that I teach and I care about. So I was well, it's not going to hurt me to know more. But it was just your regular run-of-the-mill political history of men's wars during this time frame. There was 2 chapters in 400 pages of book, 2 chapters that even had any sort of like information about the plague in Constantinople and like how it was affecting people and like how it affected like what Justinian was doing. He did get the plague. I learned that he did get the plague, but he recovered. Anyway, so I was just like epically like disappointed, which happens all the time. Like, all the time. But this frustrates me a lot with history because this happens a lot with women's histories as well. You pick up a nonfiction book that is about a woman in history, and it ends up being a history book about the men around that woman in history. And that frustrates me to no end. And I just like, that's exactly how I felt about this book. It was just another political history of men's wars with,
but a good marketer had a good marketer on that one.
Definitely. Well, especially like, you know, because plague is sort of like coming back into like things people are interested in it after COVID, and like how these, you know, epidemics have, you know, disrupted the lives of many people who came before us, right? We know how
and changed the geopolitical temperature and the geopolitical understanding of like who we are as people. Like they shift the whole understanding of world. So
So anyway, that was just like a big like, oh, okay, well, I read it and I learned stuff, of course. But I was also like, wow, wish that would have been about like what I wanted it to be about. But
what it was titled.
Yeah, I know, right? The first word is plague of the subtitle, not, you know.
It had 2 chapters.
Yeah, it did have 2. You're right, it had 2 chapters. So that was one of my big disappointments. The other one that I was sort of like, man, I just felt like it could have been better. It could have been written better. This other one that I don't even know where I saw it, but I came across this one. It's called The Escape of Jack the Ripper. And then the subtitle is The Full Truth About the Cover-Up and His Flight from Justice.
Oh,
okay.
Interesting.
And this is nonfiction. This is a nonfiction book. So I'm like, oh, well, this could be like super interesting, like this new take on what's going on. And it was very well researched, so I'm not gonna like diss on the authors for that at all. But I do think the theory that they're like, first off, the theory that they're posing, they pose absolutely as like, this is fact, like throughout the whole book. There's never any, like the way they write the book, like this is who Jack the Ripper was, and this is his story.
As though they have met him?
As like this is like established
true
fact. Yep. So, but I can get over that because people do that all the time, right? Like people take their theories and like tout them as fact all the time, right? You just read with a discerning, you know, eye, no big deal. I do that all the time. So that was one thing that was just like, okay, well, some people might be turned off by that. But the other thing is it wasn't written very well, which was a little bit of a bummer, because it jumped around all over the place with like all these different people all the time who were only really peripherally connected to like either the person that they were proposing was Jack the Ripper, or you know the women that you know were victims, and or like the police. You know, the police played a big role in this book too, as they did, of course. But then there were like all these extraneous people that he would like go. I would listen to it, so I said he because it was a male narrator. The authors just sort of like went on and on about these people that are like, how is this even part
remotely
of what you're trying?
Pertinent.
It was like they're trying to make it longer or something. It felt like filler. It felt like there was like sort of filler. Because they didn't quite have enough to make like a good book, you know, about this idea of who Jack the Ripper was, and so they're sort of just like throwing in some like very peripheral information to like kind of get to that like 250 page mark for the anyway. So that one was just a little bit of a bummer because I think it could have been done better. I think if it had been presented in a different way and if it had been written a little bit more cohesively, I think it would have. It could have. It had potential. You know what I mean? Like to be a very, like interesting. It was interesting anyway, but it could have been like really interesting. You know, it
could have been a lot more engaging as a book. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So anyway, there was just a couple. I have a couple other disappointments, but maybe you want to like share something before.
Well, I'll talk about my nonfiction for a minute, which isn't a disappointment. It is. It's been a long time since I've read an academic book written by an academic for academics. But it's called Living a Feminist Life by Sarah Ahmed. And it is really wonderful. I'm actually listening to it, but it is It is dense. It's fascinating. I mean, on this front, it says everyone should read this book, Bell Hooks. So you do what Bell Hooks says. And I don't disagree. I think it's really, she is really going into and dissecting and offering new perspective on what it is to be feminist, what it is to be intersectional, what it is to live and practice and praxis with those things versus just what unfortunately has been the heritage of white feminism and white women's feminism, which is a lot more of like, we're going to say these things, but yet we'll maintain the patriarchy in the places that it actually benefits us, right? Yeah. So, so in that regard, I find it's a fascinating book. But yes, she is one of those authors. And I would say for somebody who might want to read it who's not a hardcore academic, and I don't think it's supposed to be, but she is. Yeah. And she knows she is. She's a philosopher. Yeah. So you put those two things together, and it's like a read. Yeah. Worth it. I do, and sometimes it's not worth it. But it is worth it. But I would suggest if it was something that sounded interesting to you that you would like to just delve deeper into around feminism, it is a good one to listen to. The woman it isn't Sarah Ahmed who reads it on the audio version, but she does a really good job because Professor Ahmed does this thing with language where she'll use the same words in different sentence structures in order to pull apart the meaning of things. Okay. And you know what I'm talking about, yes, right, Hattie? You read it. Right. Okay. And the reader does a great job of really changing the emphasis in those different ways so that you're re-engaging instead of being like, did she just literally say the same thing 3 times? Yeah. Yes, but no. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it is really very good. And I could have sworn you told me to read this years ago. It's been sitting on my shelf for years.
I feel like I need to borrow your book. Cause, this whole time, I'm like, how have I not read this? And now I wonder if I have or something, and I just have no, but I feel like I would remember it.
It's been, this has literally been sitting on my shelf for years. I feel like it was when we did the Obama book club. Yeah. And we were doing some of the things off of that was when I purchased it. I don't know why I thought you had recommended it to me, but you can borrow this.
Okay, I totally want to borrow it. It definitely sounds like right up my alley too. So
yeah, and it is. It's right up your alley. And our dear friend Amy will also borrow this because she will love it.
She will love it.
She loved that. But I hadn't realized how long it had been.
Yeah, because that might have been 2020, maybe 2019.
Well. And how long it's been since I've read an academic book too.
Yeah. Well, you've been out of school for a while, man.
I know, but I think people like to say I read really heavy, really heavy books, really and then I'm like, then I read a real and I'm like, no, I really don't. But I get it. I do get it. So anyway, but I highly recommend it. If Bell Hooks says you should read it, you should
definitely read it then.
She is fascinating, and she does she's just doing a really interesting job. I'm probably 2/3 of the way through. I think I have 2 hours left on it. So, but yeah, it is an interesting, it's an interesting read. Yeah. So definitely, but a good one. So highly recommend.
Excellent. Excellent.
My fiction that I'm reading right now, and I've been at it about a week now, and that just has to do with my inability to get anything done for my work stuff.
Well, you had a crazy schedule stuff. Oh yes, Stephen. Yeah.
Stephen King's The Long Walk, which was I teach confirmation as part of my job, and a couple of years ago.
Confirmation kids, for all those people who don't know.
What was that?
And how old are confirmation kids for the?
Oh, I'm sorry. How old are they? They are 7th and 8th graders. They are 7th and 8th graders in my confirmation program. And a couple of years ago, I had a young man, who actually really liked to read. And so we ended up talking about books, and he told me that his favorite book ever was Stephen King's The Long Walk. So I put it on my list, and I've been trying to find a used copy, and I finally found one a couple months ago, and I started reading this book. And what I want to say is it hasn't held up well to 2023 in some of its things. Two, it's fascinating for me to always read somebody else's favorite book, because like the whole time I'm reading it, I'm like, why is this his favorite book?
Thinking about the person,
and I think I get why it's his favorite book, but it's not my favorite book. It's a bunch of boys who go on a really long walk until they buy a ticket, which, So, it's graphic and it's psychologically screwed up.
Yep.
And I don't love it, but I certainly am not sad. I'm almost done. I'm like 50 pages from the end.
Yeah.
I'm not sad I read it, and I do enjoy reading people's favorite books. And like, I think it always gives you a little bit of an insight into who that human being is, and it's a really easy way to connect with people. And it's, for me, that's not true for everybody. For me, it's a really low bar of connection. Like, it doesn't take much for me to like read somebody's favorite book. Yeah. So, but Stephen King, I am just gonna say, as much as I like, it's fine. Stephen King is a good writer. It's kind of obnoxious. Like, he's a very engaging, like, there is a part of it I want to keep reading it. There's a part of it that I'm like, I don't really want to read it because of like, I know what's gonna happen. So like, in this particular case, I don't really want to read it. Like, which one doesn't? Buy a ticket. Anyway, so when you know the premise so well, it's like, okay, I just have to figure out how it gets to the end. That's really sad. But he is so prolific, and he is prolific for a reason, which is he is a very good writer. So it is never like other than The Stand, which we can't talk about anymore. But other than that, I've never been sad of any of the books that I've read of Stephen King. Like, I've never been mad at the end of them, except for The Stand. And I was mad in the middle of that one. So
you were like basically mad almost 3/4 of the time that you were reading that one, just like on principle and the length of it, and Anyway,
and I didn't know, but I purchased the unedited his 25th anniversary that had the parts that his editor had taken out because it was too long, but then he put back in. And I was like, oh, I'm dying. Of course. But anyway. But those are actually, that's all I've been reading. That's it right now, as I've been like trying to get done with. But I do have a couple things on docket that I was going to talk about, but you go ahead and tell about the other disappointments that you have.
Okay. I'm actually going to switch gears to a couple that I'm loving, and they're also nonfiction. We're kind of doing a lot of nonfiction lately, me and Hannah, for some reason, whatever, it's cool. But I want to say I am listening to Isabel Wilkerson's Cast. Yeah. Right? So Isabel Wilkerson wrote The Warmth of Other Suns, which I just finished in April. I listened to it on Audible. It's phenomenal. I loved The Warmth of Other Suns. It was brilliant. It's about the Great Migration, and she does a brilliant job of honing in on 3 different individual stories of migrating from the South to the North, and through time. She talks about like when they moved, and then like walked with these people through their whole experience up until their deaths, right? So it was brilliant, and I loved it. So then I'm like, I have to read Cast, because this was her other sort of really like seminal work that she's done. And I can't believe I'm going to say this. It may be better than The Warmth of Other Suns. Like, well, I'm listening to it. I'm halfway through it. I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is phenomenal. It's phenomenal. Amazing. Which I did say to George too about this whole mediocre May thing. I've been listening to this for a while. So like maybe like listening to this thing that's so amazing and so good and so well written. Right. And then like having these other things that are like on the side is maybe like, skewing
part of the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Sort of skewing my judgment on those other things too. Yeah. But in Cast, she's doing this really brilliant sort of historical comparison of 3 caste systems. The caste system in India, the Hindu caste system, the casts of Nazi Germany.
Okay.
And the racial casts in America.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
And it's brilliant.
Great. Well,
so
I will have to finally read these. I'm gonna
honestly,
listen to them.
I listened to both of them. Now that I think about it, I listened to Warmth of Other Suns and I'm listening to Cast. And yeah, I honestly cannot recommend them enough. They were both brilliant and insightful, and the content. I said to George, my husband, the other day, like, the content is tough, right? Like, what she's talking about, some of the stuff is really tough, but the way she writes it makes you want to keep listening, not turn it off and walk away from it.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. I mean, that's impressive.
That's very impressive.
Yeah.
That's very impressive.
Yeah.
Especially when this is like our history and we're really the bad guys. Like, the white people are the bad guys because the white people are the bad guys in these situations, in this history. Right. And there's no really getting away from that.
Really.
So yeah, Isabel Wilkerson, The Warmth of Other Suns, and Cast, just both of them are brilliant. And I highly recommend both of them. The other non-fiction that I'm reading right now, which I also am loving, I picked this up when I was with Hannah. This is called The Woman They Could Not Silence. Yeah. The Shocking Story of a Woman Who Dared to Fight Back. And this is about a woman, nonfiction. It's by Kate Moore. She wrote Radium Girls, which I also love.
And my husband also recommended. He also loved it.
Yeah.
He liked Radium Girls a lot. It's really good. Yeah.
It's really good. And this one is just as good. I'm only maybe a quarter of the way in. So I just started it like yesterday, the day before. So not all, too far in. But this woman was she was completely sane, totally fine woman. But she kind of jumped on the bandwagon with women's rights in the mid to late 1800s. And she started speaking her mind and having her own opinions. And her husband decided that he didn't want to have anything to do with a woman who had her own thoughts and opinions. And he threw her into an insane asylum. And this is her story. Being sent to the insane asylum, her experience in the insane asylum. She's in it right now. I'm assuming she's probably going to get out at some point. I don't know her story. Yeah. But and just the power structures, right? The power structures that not only allowed this to happen to one woman, but like that this was actually happening to a lot of women, right? Like this wasn't like just her isolated situation. Right. But just a real historical critique, because the author is obviously sort of like saying this, and this is obviously terrible, right? What's happening? So critique in that way, but also just this really historical overview of like, this is what was going on. And this is the power that these men, because in this case it was the men, had over
women's lives.
Women. Yeah. Their wives, their mothers, their daughters, that they literally could incarcerate them for having
an opinion and
disagreeing with them.
Yeah. Basically. Yeah.
So anyway, it's also it's definitely going to end up being a critique on insane asylums, of course, because they're horrific now, and so you can only imagine how awful they were then. Before psychology was even thing that people even studied. I mean, this was even like beginning of alienists, right? Which was like the very first. This is sort of even pre-alienist almost, and they were like in the first batch of folk studying psychology as a science. So anyway, they were in the late 1800s. This is the kind of mid to late 1800s that it's taking place. So anyway, highly recommend Kate Moore, Radium Girls, but also The Woman They Could Not Silence. It's fantastic.
Love that.
Yeah. So then back to you, Hannah. What were you said you had something else you wanted to share?
Well, I was just going to name a couple things that I'm going to pick up as soon as I finish The Long Walk. But one is I have a set of some graphic novels that I want to get through. They're my sister-in-law's. And so the first one I'm going to go to is, it's called Go With The Flow. It's been sitting on my side table for a while, so I'm looking forward to that. I don't know what it's about. I'm assuming a lot of things based on this cover. Yeah. But
there does seem to be a lot going on there. Yeah.
But we'll find out. So I haven't read a ton of graphic novels this year, actually, but I do love them. And I think as summer starts, as sabbatical starts, I am trying to take I have been reading a lot of nonfiction, as well as Hattie had mentioned. April and May were a lot of nonfiction, which I've really been enjoying.
Yeah.
So I am kind of taking a bit of a pause and doing the lighter side of reading. And so I'm doing a bunch of graphic novels that I've just been having sitting on my desk or in my TBR, as they say, my to be read shelf. And then I'm actually, so Hattie might talk about this, I'm not sure, but we're reading Good Omens for our book club. I have not yet started it, but I'm going away for a couple of days, and it's supposed to rain. So I think I'm going to be fine. But I'm also taking along with me for those 3 days a whole stack. Lionel just thinks I'm a big dork, my husband.
Really?
But I told him, I'm like, I'm going to just take all of the books in my TBR shelves. They're the same size as this one. So they're all all the like grocery store pickup, you know, like the fat,
Yep,
the mass-produced paperback.
Yep, the mass-produced paperback, I love it.
The mass-produced paperback. And I have like a good stack. I think there's like 8 or 9, and they're across all genres. From horror, I have one romance. I mean, it is a wide range of things. So I do have to start with this one.
Yeah,
so
you do need to start with that.
This one's done for Thursday. But then after that, I'm like, I think I'm gonna just take them all. I'm not gonna obviously read that many in 3 days, but just to have my options open.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I am these 2 weeks, and then we are going on a road trip. So I'm just like, you know what? I think I'm just gonna stick with this and like some graphic novels, stuff that I can get into and out of a lot easier than some of my other fiction and nonfiction right now. So I think June is gonna be quite. I mean, I don't know if light is necessarily the right word. There's quite a bit of horror in there, so a little bit of science fiction, but it's gonna be mass-produced paperback month. That's what it's gonna be, and graphic novel month. Yeah. So get these graphic novels done that I've been borrowing for like a long time. So that's what I'm looking forward to. What about you, sis? What are you looking forward to? Anything?
So what am I looking forward to? You know, I don't have any. Oh, you know what I am looking forward to is Middlemarch. It's been sitting on my shelf. That's George Eliot, and I bought it when I was with Hannah. And I like in my head mentally, it's such a gorgeous copy, and it's such a gorgeous book. Like the book itself is gorgeous. It's a classic. It's George Eliot. I've never read it. And so I'm like, I really want it to be like special, which is like just me setting our expectations like so high. There's
too high, and you'll be disappointed, but it's fine.
They could be met. I know.
Your method.
I know. I'm like saving that one so I can like savor it. So that's like the one that in June, because I finished up my work this month and I don't start teaching again until July. So I also decided that like Middlemarch by George Eliot is coming up in June, so I can literally just like sit on my porch, sit outside, just savor this book. Yeah,
I love it.
That's the only one that's like in my head that I'm like, okay, I'm waiting for the exact right moment, and it's going to be in June because I don't have other work stuff to do in June. So I am looking forward to that. Well,
and why don't you say what you're doing for June?
Okay,
because I'm going to be gone most of June.
Yeah. So Hannah's going to be gone most of June. She's traveling with her family doing summary stuff, and so she is leaving me high and dry to do some BiblioTalks, which is fine. I can do it if I can figure it out. Okay, I'll have to practice. I'm not gonna lie, I'm the worst. I know it's like literally one button, but it's never just one button. I'm just saying, it's never just one button. Anyway, so
do it.
So what I am gonna try to do all by myself on my own is next Sunday, and then so that's the 4th, and then on the 18th, Sunday the 18th, I'm gonna do solo BiblioTalks on a couple of book lists that I'm putting together. So the first one, which I'm working on already, and it'll probably come out at the end of this week on the blog, and then I'll talk about it on Sunday on the BiblioTalk, is going to be 8 nonfiction books about women by women. Yeah.
Nice. I love that.
I've read all of them. I decided like this, and I would tell you what prompted it is this Justinian's Flea book, right? Because this book reminded me how much I hate picking up a history book that claims to be about one thing, and then it's not. Yeah. It's exactly what every other history book on the planet is, which is a history of men and war. That's it, right? And I've done this so many times with women's histories. Like I pick up a nonfiction about some historical woman, and it inevitably ends up being a book about the men around her.
Right.
and it makes me crazy. So Justinian's Flea, reading that actually prompted me to put together this book list, because I've got a really great book list of amazing, all of them have gotten 4s or better on my thing, and I'm pretty picky about this stuff. 4 stars or 5, and they're all about women, and they are all written by women.
That's awesome.
And Hannah will recognize a bunch of them. I don't want to spoil it, so check our blog later this week, because it will be posted, and then I will talk about them a week from tonight.
Awesome.
And they're all really good. They're just really good. They're well written. They're easy to read, but intriguing, about really important women in history, both even like medieval history up until now. So it really, and from different ethnicities, different countries, because there are important women all over the world.
Really?
There sure were.
Wow.
I know.
Shocking.
How about that? How about that? So anyway, really looking forward to that one. I started working on that today, so that'll be out later this week. And then on the 18th, Juneteenth, as you may know, is Monday the 19th of June. And I'm putting together a recommended reading list for Juneteenth. So I will talk about that on Sunday the 18th.
Oh.
So
yeah, that's going to be really cool, sis.
Excited about Juneteenth. There's so much good stuff to read.
Yeah.
My book list for that literally right now is like 25 books long. It will not be 25 books long. I will edit it down, I promise. But literally, I'm thinking about it this afternoon, and I just keep thinking on another great one, and another great one, and another great one. So I was just like, write them all down, and I promise I won't give you a 25 book list. Yeah, I will edit. I won't be Stephen King. I will edit.
Good job. Good job.
But that one's going to be that'll be a really great book list too. And I think that one's going to be a mix of fiction and nonfiction. Maybe even a poetry for Hannah in there. We'll see if that makes it. You'll know which one. That's the only poetry book.
I'm thinking, is it the only one that you've ever read?
Hannah.
Okay.
Because it's the only one I've ever read. But it's a good one. So
it is.
On that list, right?
But you really should put on The Black Unicorn by Audre Lorde if you're going to do poetry for Juneteenth.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying.
Well, see, I don't know that one. I actually thought of that earlier today. I was like, well, maybe I should consult Hannah about this list before I actually decide on it, because I'm sure you'll have some good ones.
Fine. You don't have to consult me, but if it is poetry, not that the one poetry book that you have read that would be appropriate, and the only one that you've read.
Both are true. Appropriate.
Also good. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying,
there are maybe also amazing and good for that list. Yes, I hear you.
That is okay. Juneteenth's going to come around every year, so we can just keep we can add a new list
every year.
So,
yep.
Yeah, but good.
Twice a year if we wanted. Who cares?
Nobody
cares.
So
anyway, that's what I'm doing. So I will talk about those two book lists week from tonight, June 4th, and then 3 weeks from tonight on June 18th.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sweet. That will be very exciting, sis. I love that. So good.
I'm excited about it. I think it should be good. It should be fun.
Well, I think that's all we have tonight, right? Yeah. So super. Thanks for joining us whenever you did join us. As always, if you'd like to like and follow us, please do so. We're here on Instagram as well as Facebook, and we do have a YouTube channel. And you can always go to www.thebookwar.com and subscribe to our newsletter.
Good job. Good promo.
I can't help it. I just have to laugh when I do our commercial.
Our commercial's hilarious.
Yeah. So someday I should probably try to get through it without giggling. Maybe someday, but maybe
someday.
Not today.
Not this day.
Not this day. All right. Well, thank you, sis. And
have a good Memorial Day, Hannah.
You as well. And we will talk later this week, I am sure, because we have book club coming up. So
yes, we do.
All right.
Looking forward to it.
Everybody, enjoy your books. Happy reading.
Yep.
We'll talk soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.